What's up, ladies and gents, Ghost here, and today we're going to be getting back to basics with Battlefield. We're going to be going over some sort of general gameplay tips and some of the things that you guys can do and try and work on to improve your game. You know, back when Battlefield 3 came out, I wasn't really great at the game. I was pretty diabolical, really, and over the past 2 or 3 years, or however long Battlefield 3 has been out, I've learned a lot of lessons, and most of those lessons are going to be applicable in Battlefield 4 as well. So I've been taking a look at my own play and trying to work on some things, get better at the game, and hopefully once Battlefield 4 is released, I'm going to be on top of my game. So the first thing for newer players to remember is when is the appropriate time to reload. There are generally two errors that I see new players doing, and the first one is reloading far too late, where they only have 5 bullets left in a clip, they forget to reload, and a guy comes around the corner and kills them because they don't have enough rounds to take him out. The second is where they will take down somebody with around 15 rounds, so they've still got 15 rounds left in the magazine, but then they will just instinctively reload as soon as the guy dies. But think about it, what are the chances that he's got a teammate round the corner and he's now seen you on the minimap, unless you happen to have a suppressor, and he's probably going to be running straight round the corner to try and kill you. You're going to be in mid-reload and you're going to die. So hold the reload, wait to see if somebody comes, try and gain cover, get to a safe position, and then reload. Now, appearing on your enemy's minimap isn't the only thing that is going to give you away when you fire your weapon. On top of that, they're also going to see the death marker from the guy that you killed, and if the players are smart, they're most likely going to go scouring around the area, trying to find you and take you down. On top of that, there may be some enemy soldiers off in the distance who kind of have you in their line of sight, like in their peripheral vision, but they're zeroed in on another target and they haven't really realised that they could actually shoot at you yet. As soon as you fire your weapon, they're going to see the muzzle flash and they're going to start zeroing their targets in on you. And if you're mid-reload, you're going to have no way whatsoever to defend yourself. Now, you can also use this same idea against the enemy team. If you see one of your teammates die, or even if you just hear gunfire around a corner and you can tell that it's pretty close by and it's likely that there is a guy just round the corner who's fired off those few shots, don't be stupid and run straight round the corner, because more likely than not, if he's a decent player, he's going to be waiting for you with those 15 rounds left in his clip and he's going to kill you first because he's ready for you. Wait until you hear him fire the rest of the bullets. If you hear somebody fire off 20 or 25 rounds, you can be almost 100% sure that he's going to be in mid-reload when you run around the corner. So try and use that to your advantage, run around the corner and take him out. Okay, so with that covered, the next thing I wanted to talk about are angles of exposure and situational awareness. Without a doubt, one of the most important things when it comes to playing Battlefield. And this is really just something that you're going to get better at with time, and it's also partly down to just simply knowing the map, knowing all the different angles that you can actually be fired upon from, and just being careful, really. So when you move through an area, even though you're looking in one direction and you only have 90 degrees of vision, you have to be aware of your back and your sides and where you're actually exposed to fire from. So say you're peeking a corner, say you're peeking around a corner to the right, you have to be aware of everything that's going on to the left and that there could be an enemy coming from a certain position. And when you sort of take up a corner or some piece of cover, you really want to choose the best angle to get a good shot upon the enemy, but at the same time reduce the amount of angles that you can be shot from. And these greatly vary within Battlefield. So take some map on Karkand, for example. There are small bits of rubble in the middle of all the road. If you take up cover behind one of those, you're basically screwed. Even if you crouch there, you're not completely behind cover. People can still hit your head. All people to the sides and coming out of any road, anyone looking out of any window is going to see you in the middle of the road and they're going to kill you. That's a really bad piece of cover. But maybe being up in a building within a window, there's really only one direction that somebody can shoot you from, and that is through the window, unless of course somebody comes up the staircase and comes and gets you from behind, and that's just something you have to be aware of. Now, this also brings me to another interesting point, and that is going to be firing from an elevated position, which definitely has its pros and cons. Some of the pros being that you can see much more of the battlefield, so you're going to be able to see all the enemies, you're going to be able to see the firefights going on and get a general understanding of what's happening on a large scale. But some of the negative points is that you're also going to expose yourself to so many enemies. Everyone is going to see you. If you're up in some small window and you fire, everybody's going to see you. Remember, if you can see them, then they can see you as well. And whilst you may be hard to hit, you're probably going to piss a lot of people off, and they're probably going to be running up that staircase with their shotguns and what have you to try and take you down. So you definitely need to be aware of when you need to get the hell out of that building and move position, because you certainly cannot stay there for too long before you're going to die. Now, angles of exposure apply more than ever, not when you're behind cover and firing upon an enemy, but when you're actually moving through another area. And the number of angles you can be exposed to is greatly varied. It can be anything from just 1 or 2, like say you're playing close quarters, you're in a room in Zebra Tower and you move into the next room, there may just be a doorway and one window, and those are really the only 2 areas that somebody can come through. Maybe there's a guy sort of camping in the corner of the room and you have to be aware of that. But on the flip side, you can be out in an open field or on Bandar Desert, let's say, and there can literally be like 40 different angles that you're exposed from. Snipers, helicopters, etc. And you really need to learn to be aware of what those are. Alright, so with that down, let's move on to cornering, yet another important aspect of Battlefield. Cornering, if you don't know what that is, it's basically when you're peeking around a corner and shooting at somebody. More often than not, when the enemy guy knows where you are and he's going to be aiming at that corner ready to take you out. So how do you prevail in those situations? Well, first of all, don't peek out too far around the corner. If you go and expose your entire body, it's going to be a much easier hit for the enemy to take. Try and go peek around the corner when one of your allies pops out. So when one of the, maybe you have an ally from another corner, he pops out, he lays down some suppressing fire, try and sort of time your peek with his so that they have 2 targets to shoot at instead of just 1. Because if they have a few guys there, chances are, if you pop your head out, they're all going to fire at you, and they're probably going to, between them, get enough hits on you to actually kill you. And you really need to learn to know your weapon. So I would definitely suggest a great website, simthic.com. Go over there and check out your weapon's accuracy while moving and while stationary. More often than not, weapons usually have a little bit worse accuracy while moving, and this can be any kind of movement. So if you're strafing around the corner and you're sort of firing while you're strafing, that counts as ADSing while moving, and some weapons can have vastly inferior accuracy when you're moving. Take, for example, the AS Val. It is pinpoint accurate when you're stationary, but when you're moving, nowhere near as good. So it's definitely a good idea to actually learn a little bit about the weapon you're using and how it should best be used. Now, I would have thought I don't really have to mention this point, but since I see so many people doing it, I'm going to go and cover it. So don't sprint around corners. I see so many people doing this. It's pretty self-explanatory, but basically you're going to have to bring up your weapon after you sprint. It takes a split second longer than if you are not sprinting, and if the guy around the corner isn't sprinting, he's obviously going to be able to kill you first, unless he's just a terrible shot. Now, it may not seem like it takes a terribly long time to bring your weapon up, but in Battlefield 3 it only takes a split second to kill somebody, and that time is definitely enough to give the enemy the upper hand. So don't sprint around corners. On the contrary, I usually ADS around corners. So when I go out into a new area, I will actually ADS, and I find it quite difficult, especially if I go into a big open field, or I'm playing Strike at Karkin, for example, and there's lots of windows, alleyways, and you're looking out onto a huge road. I find it very hard to sort of take in all the information in one go, and I find that by ADSing, I'm sort of able to scope out the area and clear one area at a time to make sure there's nobody there. And once I started doing this, I found that I was identifying more targets, and I was able to kill people before they would even see me much more of the time. So if you're the kind of person who just sort of walks around the corner, you know, maybe you don't sprint, but you sort of walk around the corner, and you will only ADS if you actually see somebody, try this out. You know, ADS around every single corner you go around, and you'll probably find that you're able to kill a lot more people before they can get you. Alright, so I wanted to talk a little bit about class and weapon selection. So you really need to learn the different classes, of course, learn the different weapons in the game, and once Battlefield 4 comes out, there are going to be plenty of new weapons. I'm going to be covering them as best I can with the information that's available, probably doing some reviews and stuff. So I'm going to be definitely getting into the stats of those weapons straight away to learn how they handle, learn whether they're good at short ranges, medium ranges, or long ranges. And in turn, you should be picking a weapon and a class that suits the map, the game type, and the player that you are on, because you're not just playing against the enemy players, you're playing against the map, and you're playing against the game size, and you're playing against the game type. So you have to take all of these things into account when you select a weapon and a class. Right, so this next tip is going to be on properly learning to read your minimap. This is definitely one of the most useful skills in Battlefield. You need to be able to interpret what is on the minimap. You know, between the minimap and what you see in the game, that is going to give you the overall picture of actually what is happening on the battlefield. It's like in real life, if you can see but you can't hear, you only really get half of the overall picture. And that's what a lot of new players experience when they don't really understand properly what's going on the minimap. They only see what happens on the main screen, and they'll maybe sort of see a red dot and be like, oh, there's a guy over there, I'm just going to run straight after him and try and kill him. And that's not always the best course of action. You need to be able to look at the minimap and sort of realize what's going on, what's the overall picture. You know, so you can see if a lot of your teammates have died in a certain position. It's probably not a great idea for you to go there as well, because you are more than likely going to die yourself. You're going to be able to interpret from all the red dots from your enemies firing. Are they doing some big push on one of our objectives? Are they flanking us? You're also going to be able to identify opportune moments. If you see a lot of red dots clustered in a certain area and all of your teammates are in the same corridor and there's this sort of huge firefight going on between your team and the enemy team, use that opportunity to sneak around some sort of side path and get a flank on the enemy and help your team to sort of overthrow them. You have to take these opportunities, and you can only really see them on the minimap. You can't always see them in game. So the next point is taking the path of least resistance, and what I mean by that is don't just go in a straight line from point A to point B. So say you see B flag and you want to go there, you know, don't just go for the shortest path. Go for the path of least resistance, where there are the least number of enemies, especially if you're sort of by yourself, you don't really have any backup from squad mates or from your teammates. Try and pick an area where you're going to be sneaking around the back. You're going to be able to flank the enemy from the side or from the back, and you're not going to encounter as much resistance, and that way your team will easily be able to move towards the objective. Maybe you're not even going to an objective, maybe you just want to get through a certain area, but if you see all of your teammates dying in a certain area, don't go and join in the spam fest. Try and take a different path. I know sometimes it may be tempting when you see all those red dots on the minimap and you think, oh, I want to lob a grenade in there, or I want to sort of peek around that corner and see how many people I can kill. If you can see that your teammates are getting dominated, they're getting owned, and they're just sort of sat there rezzing each other, try and take a different path. You wouldn't believe the number of players I see that just go in exactly the same direction as all the other players. If all of your team go in the same place, it's just going to be a slugfest and you're going to get owned. Take Operation Metro, for example. When you're on the second set of MCOMs and you're attacking, there are really three different paths that you can take. You've got the left side along the train tracks, you've got the right side along the train tracks, and then you have the middle platform area with the sort of buildings and stuff like that. That middle building area, it always turns into a bloodbath, and all the players just end up going there. Or sometimes it's on the right side, you know, everybody ends up sort of coupled right outside B objective in this little room with those lockers in there, and that turns into a bloodbath. And people just don't spread themselves out and attack from many different directions, so they're able to flank the enemy. They all just join each other and they just sit there spamming their defibs, rezzing each other, and as a result your team usually ends up losing. So just don't be one of those players. Try and think a little bit outside the box. Now, I made a video a few weeks or possibly months ago on key bindings and sensitivities, and these are the key bindings and sensitivities that I personally use on my mouse and keyboard, and when I learnt of these, they really help with my play. So I'm going to link you guys in an annotation somewhere on the screen to that video so you can check it out for yourself. I do a few things, like I use my scroll wheel a lot, up and down. I use the click on the actual scroll wheel, so mouse button 3. I use the buttons on the side of my mouse for crouching and going prone, and these things just really allow me to have more control over my character in game whilst I'm switching weapons and that sort of thing. So definitely go and check out that video. So the final tip that I'm going to give you guys is post-it notes. Now you may be wondering what the hell I'm talking about, but I literally put post-it notes on my monitor. It's so easy to sort of forget things in the game. It's really easy to jump in a game and you just go on autopilot, you start reloading, you know, after you shot 10 rounds, and you start doing all the old habits that you're used to doing and just sort of having fun in the game, and you forget about the things you're trying to get better at. So to remind yourself, write them on post-it notes, you know, write stuff like hold the reload on a post-it note and stick it to the side of your monitor so that every time you die you're going to see that post-it note and be reminded, I need to hold that reload. And eventually over time it will just become muscle memory. You'll start doing it without having to think about it, and as a result it will improve your play. I've used this sort of tip myself for Battlefield 3, I use it for StarCraft 2, you know, like build more supply depots. I do that all the time, and this always helps me to remember what I'm actually trying to work on in my play. Alright guys, those are about all the tips that I have for you today, so hopefully you can put some of those to good use and as a result improve your play. Much of this should all be the same going on into Battlefield 4. I haven't gotten my hands on the game at E3 or anything like that, so I don't really know how it's going to play, but from the footage that I've seen it seems pretty similar. So hopefully all of these lessons are also going to be applicable there, and when we start playing in the beta or in the proper game itself, we're all going to be at the top of our game and owning up in Conquest and Rush. Now if you guys have any specific tips of your own that you'd like to share in this video, then feel free to leave those down in the comments below. Let me know how you get on with the tips that I gave you, if you're having difficulties, if it's helped improve your game, so that I can get a little bit of feedback on the video. That would be great. Hope you enjoyed this one guys, thanks for watching. If you did, please leave a like down below and feel free to subscribe for more of the same in the future. I've been Ghost and I will see you next time. Cheers.